Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 62 of Little Things for Bonsai People. And this time I am joined by my co-host, Mike Lane of Kitsune Bonsai. How's it going, Mike?
It's good. How you guys?
How you doing? How's it going? Is it good down there in Florida right now?
Yes, it's cool, and temperatures are reasonably nice, but the trees aren't growing, so I'm chomping at the bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, even in Florida, where it seems like it's the holiday all the time.
Yeah, no, from now until they probably won't really move again. I mean, if we get like a warm spell, then it'll start like moving again, but it's been like consistently every night, 50s. And so they don't really like that too much, the tropicals. So they just stop growing.
Yep. And we can talk about some seasonal change stuff, but I think we're going to go ahead and cover today's topic. What we will be talking about in today's topic is New Year's resolutions as far as bonsai goes. Maybe me and Mike have a few personal resolutions as well. And then also, if we have the time and we can get into it, I think there's something to be said about bonsai display tables and how they should be arranged, and also what's appropriate in bonsai display on a shohin rack is what, I mean, I don't know if that's slang saying bonsai rack. I've heard that every once in a while, but shohin bonsai displays. Would you say rack? Have you ever said that before, Mike?
No, not really, but I mean, I don't think it's incorrect.
Yeah, it's just something I've heard in passing.
We can get more into that, but
yeah.
No, the Japanese have their own name for it and whatnot, and break down, each section of it according to specific trees. So,
yep, definitely. But before we get into that, I do need to mention that our podcast is sponsored by our amazing patrons over at patreon.com/little things for bonsai people. Head over there and become a bonsai best bud. I'm trying to take off a jacket at the same time. And hang out in the Discord with these amazing people, starting off our list with, and this is something I have to say real quick before I go through this list for the, I think it's like the 50th time now. If this list breaks 40, I will have to start doing this a different way. So just a forewarning out there. Tori Solis, Vicky Oth, Boyd Snellgrove, Ricky Ruins, Joshua Bentley, Snappy Chappers, Joel Jenkins, Justin Knight, Backyard, Bonsai Australia, Ben Creedon, Greenwich Gardens, Taylor Peacock, Chase Pertweet, Austin Adkins, Karen Codswell, Ryan Giordano, Luis Torres, AC Castle, Bonsai Marine, Jess Potts, Chris Fassoon, Timothy Arsenal, Randy Bennett, Victorina Ridgway, LaRon's Bonsai Yard, Nate Murray, Nancy Hoffman, J.M. Stewart, Woodworking, Warehouse Rat, David N., Barry's Bonsai, Sean Seaman, Gilbert Juarez, and David J. B. Bocciccini, I think is how you say it. Sorry if I butchered that. And then we also have our...
I highly doubt that's how you say it.
I know. It's always...
Just from track record.
Whatever. But also like to thank our specimen best buds. These are our best buds at the $30 level. Ryuin Bonsai Garden and Bill's Bayou. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring at the $30 level. It's amazing. Thank you guys so much. That support doesn't go unnoticed. It helps us, keep up the content. It helps us get more access to the things that we need to make this show sound great. So thank you guys so much. And also our main show sponsor, Joshua Roth Tools. Thank you guys so much for being our main sponsor of the show. And of course, I can't go on without mentioning our editor, Matt O'Donnell. He makes it sound smart. He cleans up our audio and makes us enjoyable to listen to. Go over to mattodonnell.com, fill out a contact form, and start your own podcast show or audio engineering project with him. He's a set basis living in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's an all-around awesome guy. And speaking of audio engineer or podcast show, Matt's just opened up his own podcast show that he's going to be releasing. I think it's going to be releasing in a couple of weeks from this recording, maybe next week. But it's called Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. And you guys go subscribe to it. I don't know if he's got any previews or channel like pre-sub type thing that you can do and get some maybe he has a Patreon for it. I'm not sure yet. But I'll be talking to Matt a little bit later on about that some more. But yeah, it sounds like some really cool stuff. He's going to be interviewing other professionals, other musicians, artists, people in different industries, just to get to know them, get to hear how things work in their part of the world, their part of their jobs, and how they fulfill what they need to keep their careers going, and how to fulfill their passions for what they do. It's a really cool project Matt's put together, and I know that I will be on there potentially. So we'll see how that goes. But congratulations, Matt. I hope your show goes really well. But yeah, so let's talk about New Year's resolutions.
All right.
So what are you feeling, Mike? Are you, as far as bonsai goes, let's just do our personal ones real quick. I mean, are there any personal ones that you feel okay with?
Yeah.
Thing on there?
Yeah, they're all like the corny ones though, like the typical ones. Like I'm trying to eat better, sleep better, just basically do that kind of thing. Go to bed at a normal time. Like,
oh yeah,
I've had really bad insomnia. Yeah, I was eating probably a bag of Starburst a night, like a giant family size a night. And,
family size?
Yeah, at least. And so now trying to cut sugar out and stuff like that. And so just that kind of stuff. And how about you?
Oh, well, I mean, I can see the eating better thing because me and Caitlin, my wife, just watched this documentary type short thing on Netflix where it's called You Are What You Eat.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like they go into it where they take twins, and it gets really interesting at the beginning of the show. They're like, we're going to take twins, and since their DNA is identical, we're going to put them on two different diets. And it's like they go on to a meat diet, like meat included, like healthy, clean eating meat diet, and versus a clean eating plant diet. And then the show just kind of like evolved into this thing where they did that for the first episode, and then it was like a climate change show. All of a sudden it was like, if we keep on producing more meat and the meat industry keeps escalating, the chicken farms and the cow farms will take over the world. And I was like, whoa, I didn't eat all this.
Yeah.
I've already seen Super Size Me 1 and 2. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I would like to eat healthier. I mean, I want to, I will be honest. I've consumed a lot of alcohol. Just, I mean, and when we're younger and we're in our early 20s and stuff, we like to hang out and do that kind of stuff. I've always been like a social drinker and stuff. But now that I'm getting older now, I really, really want to cut back. I want to limit myself to, one drink a week, one drink a month if possible. For special things, because I'm like, oof. I just turned 34 last couple of days ago. And so I already feel it, man, I'm not saying I'm old, but you could feel at that point when your body's like no longer recovering nearly as fast as you possibly could do it,
It's true.
So you just being conscientious of that. And then, I mean, there's a couple of things financially that I just want to be better, like conscientious about, that will just save my ass in the long run, I guess you can say. So those are some personal things. And I think the bonsai things are a little bit more happy feeling. Because they're not going to be as emotionally demanding. Because I know New Year's resolution, you do that for yourself. You're like, some people wake up and they'll go, okay, I'm going to run, 3 times a week, or they say like, I'm going to read a book once a day for 30 minutes, and that kind of stuff. This stuff holds up. Some people can form some great habits doing that for themselves. But for bonsai, I think New Year's resolutions for bonsai is just kind of better to have a more advancement on how you care for your trees, develop your trees, and think about your trees. And there's definitely things that you can do for yourself to promise yourself you'll do those things better. And I think there's a lot more to be said about. And like I said, it's a lot more enjoyable. You're like, oh, if I do this for my bonsai, then it'll just get that much better. Obviously, there's things that I decided to start doing last year that's greatly reflected on the health of my collection now. So, but yeah, what do you got for a couple of things in mind for yourself?
I think the biggest thing is revisiting kind of that, our talk about art and our talk about like what it means to be an artist and stuff like that. I think I'm content with, I think I'm finally going to really try to just be content with who I am, and like who I am as either, which I don't think I'm an artist and I don't really care anymore. But kind of being more truthful with myself and accepting those parts. And like, for instance, I was kind of debating whether I really wanted to stick with Shohin bonsai. And I think that it's still something that is really speaks deeply to me, as far as that's how I want to practice bonsai. That's where I get a lot of enjoyment out of bonsai. And I think this year's going to be about like maintaining the confidence, like not letting so many outside influences kind of determine my value, my self-worth. So yeah, something like that. I think that's going to play huge into my bonsai, because I think not even this year, but every year I've always kind of listened to other people as far as how I should do my bonsai. And I've always like looked at my trees and compared them to other people and said, okay, well, that's how I should do my bonsai. And the reality is, like, at this point in the game, I can always learn new things, but I like how I do my bonsai. I do. I enjoy the methodology. And I think I need to be more confident about that. And I need to be more confident in my approach and not always be looking for the next person's approach, I guess.
So kind of taking the lead on designs and just overall philosophy of how you approach bonsai, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. One of the things, like, not to get too deep, but talking about wabi-sabi all the time and talking about Zen, and like I always say these words like, oh, the way they practice it in Japan and yada yada. And the truth is I don't even think that really the world I envision bonsai being, I don't think that really exists in Japan. I think that's a made up world that I kind of created. And I think at one point it existed where everybody was very Zen, where bonsai was about Zen and about wabi-sabi and about those kind of spiritual elements. But I think now it's a lot of business. I think it's majority business. And I think that's not to say that I can't recreate that world, though. And I think I've been like looking for some kind of truth. And it was really disheartening to kind of make that realization that, hey, maybe this doesn't exist. But it's also very, very invigorating and encouraging to think, hey, that's okay. I can make my own bonsai world, and, I can pursue bonsai with the philosophy I want to pursue. So,
I mean, I've had a couple of people coming into the nursery, like even today, we had this conversation a few times where we're starting to talk about a newer American bonsai approach just happening. I have this strong feeling it's happening right now, especially with professionals getting in and really starting to put themselves out there. Like, for instance, like you traveling around and teaching and stuff. I also know Jennifer Price has been doing her stuff a lot. She's been traveling a lot. And you got Kayla Mooney coming back from Japan soon. You get a lot of these young people running the circuit and coming in, and we're going to be kind of sculpting the next new version of what American bonsai is going to look like. And what you're saying, I mean, it sounds a little harsh, but it is a reality. We don't know what like bonsai in Japan really was like. And even the guys that go over and they apprentice, like, and they come back and they share all this amazing knowledge, it's still not our culture. And so I think we're approaching this new American style, like ever so slightly. Like it all, of course, started back whenever and I think there's early pioneers in it, with people kind of doing things that have their time, like for instance, Dan Robinson has a kind of a good example of that, where he was thinking a little bit more ahead. And now it's come around. It seems like everybody wants to do that. And then you also got Ryan Neal talking about that style and doing that kind of thing too. And it's like, where are we going to end up really soon here? And so I don't think I think you're on the right track, doing bonsai for yourself, being your own bonsai man, I guess you could say. And you know, we don't want to push too far and, you know, take too many opinions too seriously, I guess, is also what you meant a moment ago when you said you were just taking too many people's takes on your trees.
Yeah, and just too many people's opinions on like, oh, I shouldn't do Shohin's lazy bonsai, things like that. And you know, I just I don't agree. And even if I did agree, I think it's what works for me. You know, I think it's one of the things that I, you know, not to get too deep into it, but like I've always struggled with ADHD. You know, I've always had struggle with focus, and I've tried to be disciplined and work on big, massive trees, and I can get the work done, but it's not enjoyable to me. You know, it's not concise, and it's not something that I can kind of do and be flighty with, you know, do and finish up in a timely manner and move on to something else. It's something that demands a lot of time and effort. And the reality is like, that's working against who I am to like try and think that that's really what I'm going to enjoy. You know, I can do it, and I do it professionally, and I think I do it pretty well, but I enjoy working on smaller trees that are easier for me to get my head around. And like I said, it's the time commitment. It's the time of like, I don't want to invest 36 hours into one styling of one tree, and it's not enjoyable for me. And so if you put two trees in front of me and no one's around and no one was there to judge me, I would sit there and I'd probably do the smaller one. And I'd move on and do something else and come back and do another small one later and move on and do something else. And that's an approach that's worked for me. And I don't know that I would have had success if that avenue wasn't there for me. So it's, you know, listening to people's critiques about how I should do my bonsai and what makes a disciplined practitioner and what doesn't is, you know, not worth my time.
I mean, I think vibing in the creation of bonsai, which is, it sounds like you've been doing for some time now, not just having bones like Shohin and maintaining them, but there is a lot of creation to be done in Shohin. And it, I don't know, man, like I think continuing to create bonsai from cuttings and from, you know, the proper ways of approaching it, there's always that kind of, what's the next tree going to look like that I create? And I love that thought. And, and Guy Guidry said it a few episodes back. He was like, he was really into the creation of the trees. Or at least that's something he's told me a handful of times. In recent times that I've been able to work with him is, he's like, this is what gets me going. I don't want to use the other terminology that he uses. It's a little more derogatory. But he really vibes in the creating the trees, and he could create hundreds of trees. And then seeing the end of them, he told me not until recently did he really start feeling like, now that he's in his older age, he's created so many trees that he's got some older trees that he's had for a very long time. He's like, now I'm actually appreciating these trees and I'm doing things the right way. And he's been doing bonsai for 35, 40 years, you know? And so it is a weird thing to think that, you know, you've gotten to a point where you're making trees and you're like, I can make this one and that one. And then you're like, wait, I need to appreciate larger trees and know how to approach that and how to observe them, how to work on them and stuff. It's kind of a weird reverse engineering, because you've gone somewhere with the Shohin stuff that a lot of people don't go that far. You know what I mean? Yeah. And now it feels like you kind of have to backtrack a little bit. That's what it makes it sound like.
And I still love, like, I love Yamadori. I love my buttonwoods more than anything. They're my number one, and they're not small trees. They're like Chuhin, and and that's probably my favorite size tree to work on is a Chuhin size tree. But I have no interest in working one of these like giant, enormous, multi-day projects. I mean, it's cool to do every now and then, but if you're asking my core, like, again, like, I'm not saying professionally, like, that's a cool project to do professionally. I like doing that. But my core, if you were to sit me down, no one else is there to judge. I just want to kind of grab something that I can get my head around. I want to grab something concise and something that's not backbreaking and not like this. I get it. It's cool to work on a big tree. It's like macho and badass. But to me, like, the cooler thing for me alone is like the Zen part of it. Like, I truly do this for wabi sabi. I truly do this for the like Zen teachings and the essence of that. And so to me, like, if you start getting too far away from that, then you're not doing like what bonsai was meant to be. And in my mind, that could all end up being baloney. And, I wasn't raised in Japan, but my understanding of like the core principles of bonsai it's based in wabi sabi, it's based in Zen, and it's based in Shinto. And those are things that I have always found interesting as far as Shinto, and always found a deep spiritual connection to Zen. So I think that's my truth in bonsai, and I will go whichever path I feel is more true to that. Laurent and I had very good conversations about what is more wabi-sabi. Is it more wabi-sabi to refine a tree, get a tree to a perfect state of refinement, and hold it in that state of refinement forever and never let it change? Or is it more wabi-sabi to accept that that's not real, that can't last forever, and accept the fact, like he does, where a tree evolves to its next state. If you're not using it, if it's not being displayed, then it's evolving into something else, and it's changing into something else. And the benefits to that, it's almost like life tells you what's the right direction, because think of like how many issues you would avoid if your tree was always in the development state, if it's always young and vigorous, and you avoided all refinement except for the 2 years that you needed to like vie on all that energy you've built up.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. I don't know if ultimately the old Japanese way of doing bonsai will be the way that I do it going forward. But whatever way I do it will be whatever I feel is truest to wabi sabi.
Yeah. And for our listeners, the Chuhin size is, I think that's the one that's like right at 10 inches, maybe a little bit taller.
It's like a two-handed tree.
Two-hand tree. Yeah, because
two-handed tree.
The size of bonsai is also kind of described like Shohin is usually like your one-hand tree, or your palm.
One-hand tree, yeah.
Yeah, so your Chuhin, and I think that's a great way to look at it too, as far as kind of going back to that, the size of the tree, like, yeah, giant trees, like you said, that's great. Get yourself, for instance, in my range, I'm just going to go ahead and drop my my one time I say it per episode, bald cypress. Go get your big boy cypress tree and make yourself a big bonsai. I mean, if that's really what you want to do, but don't have a whole collection of stuff like that. Because then Mike's right. You're saying like that one tree could take you 2 or 3 days to go in and properly wire it and refine it and do all the work you need to. And then it's a nightmare repotting that kind of thing. And then you get older, and the older you get, the less likely those types of trees will be realistic to you. So I think the Chuhin is a great size. As I'm starting to grow older now, and I'm looking, I mean, me and you both are looking at, like, we'll have our children soon here. It's like the Chuhin size, it's something that I could juggle literally and figuratively, like, between
Correct.
life.
Yes.
They're easier to consume. They're easier to carry. They're not quite pocket sized bonsai, but they're big enough that we can, you said, like you're saying, like there's more wabi-sabi building blocks that can be done with a slightly larger tree, like letting it grow for several decades until you make those decisions to put it into refinement. Kind of like how you said, like Laurent has this approach. That's, that's possible with those types of trees, and you could contort and build and make those trees for a long time and still be able to carry it, without struggling. And I think those are, they say that like there's the old man's bonsai tree. I think that's really the old man's tree. I mean, once the old man can't lift a chew in anymore, I mean, hopefully someone's around to help him, take on the next leg of that tree's development at that point. But I mean,
well, and that's the thing about Zen is, it's like your ego has no place in it. Yeah. So like, why do you really want a big tree? Like, not you, but like what the average person, why do you really want it? It's like, usually it's like because it's big. It's like big and it's like impactful. Mm-hmm. And you want to be seen. You want something that stands out. And a big part of Zen is not standing out, blending in with the crowd. You blend in and, killing your ego. And so that's I think that's a part of bonsai that's often overlooked, as far as the artistry of it, is that the Western artist is embracing the ego while the Eastern artist is kind of like, you should kill that shit.
Yeah. So, well, kind of going into, I mean, do you have any other input on your New Year's resolution? It started out as one thing and now it's kind of it evolved.
No, but I do think that's a serious resolution. It's just being true to myself, being confident in the way I do things. It's and not being so easily thrown into a crisis of faith. Like, just trust myself, just trust like the way I do things. I've had great teachers. I've been studying for a long time. I've been a professional for a long time. And so just this is going to be the year where hopefully I embrace that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I mean, that's one of the things why we were talking a little while back on previous episodes and stuff, where I'm like, this is a great way to track those basically those emotions towards how we approach bonsai and how we continue to develop and work. And I think teaching people is going to have a huge impact too, because that's the best way to learn is teaching, in my opinion. So the more you teach, the more you accelerate your understanding too. And so as we go on with the show and we revisit these types of conversations again and again, that's where we'll think, oh, I said this before, but I said this differently, a little bit differently each time. And because that's, to be kind of poetic here, that's kind of what bonsai is. It's like the same thing over again, but I've done this before, but it's a little bit different now because trees can't stay the same. You can have a similar look. Like you have kind of with how junipers, you have to grow the branch and then steadily replace the branch for better refinement and better taper in your branch over time. We can kind of look at it the same way. So oh, hey, Carmen, did I tell you about Bonsai Central yet?
No, I don't think you have.
Oh, I think I might have mentioned it a few other times, but it's going to be May 3rd through 5th in 2024 in St. Louis, Missouri. It's basically the national show, but it's going to be Central America, and it's going to be an awesome show with cash awards and prizes. There's going to be a professional bonsai show and a kusamono show as well.
Ooh. With
the presentation during dinner for rewards and whatnot. But if you want to submit a tree, I think you have to submit 2 to 4 photos, and you need a brief description of your tree and send it over to the contact form at bonsaicentral.com. That's bonsai-central.com. But I think there's going to be vendors there too. Do you know what vendors were included? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard that it's going to be something like 25 plus of the best vendors from around the country. So like including nurseries, potters, stand makers, tool suppliers, and all of that.
but like specifically, I thought I heard that there was going to be American potters. Like,
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, now Toshi Take is going to be there. Vicky Chamberlain, Eli Atkins of Waldo Street Pottery, April Grigsby, Roy Minari, and Byron Merrick. Sellers of imported Japanese and antique Chinese pots are going to be there too.
that's amazing. I mean, there must be like a pretty good lineup for this show as far as like their headliners. There should be some really good bonsai artists. Do you have any idea who that might be? I think I might have heard about Bjorn, but there's some other ones, right?
Oh, yeah, Bjorn's going to be there. Tyler Sherrod as well. Maria Hayek, Andrew Robson, Maro Stemberger, and Young Cho.
Oh,
I think there's going to be workshops, show walkthroughs, critiques, all of that stuff.
yeah, that sounds awesome. There should be somewhere to go on bonsai-central.com, and you can fill out the opportunities to do workshops with these professionals. They have really great material, I've heard. It's going to be stuff like twisted junipers and old fused maples and really awesome pieces of material for Young's Kosumono class. So I think if you guys are interested, y'all should go check out bonsai-central.com and see if you can register for the show, sign up for workshops if they're still available. But I'll definitely be there this year.
Awesome. That's sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Bonsai Central, for sponsoring our show. But yeah, no, I think that's a great New Year's resolution for bonsai. My resolutions are going to sound a little bit more what's that? Not technical. I guess a little bit more analytical as far as treatment and care of bonsai.
Yeah.
But no, I know the listeners and people in the Discord say they always eat it up whenever Mike goes into the deep Zen conversation. So it's definitely appreciate it for that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. But yeah, the as far as how I've been looking at bonsai too, mine is a little. It could be a little similar. I was thinking back about whenever I was approaching bonsai last year, and I've been training with a couple of professionals and learning from a couple of people that either by passing or people come over, or I'm lucky with the nursery where I have people pop in and I'm able to work with them, and I'm like, show me and tell me everything you can within our time frame. And so I was filling a lot of gaps of my knowledge in, and then what really turned it around is I go up and I go learn with Michael Hagedorn and see how a real bonsai garden is ran. And so I created one of those types of environments in my own backyard, and I started running things a certain way for myself. And I'm being very, very meticulous with my trees. I'm developing them in very, very particular ways that, that's going to be the best way. That's going to be what this tree needs. This is how you're supposed to practice this and that. And then as I started doing that, it was kind of like part of my thinking was when I started out last year, it wasn't necessarily a resolution, but I know it was something that I made a change in myself. Was like remembering that not even 5-6 years ago, I had bonsai trees that I thought were amazing in plastic training pots, like pots from like from what would you say? From just the regular nursery cans, I guess you could say is the better thing to say. And I'm like, wow, that's what I thought was really cool. And then I'm doing this at a higher level, and I'm like, oh, this is where I'm at now. But I missed that way of thinking. I missed that a lot. So it was like, okay, I've got some of my trees are on automatic watering to help me assist me in watering them properly, letting them dry, and then I'll watch the weather, and then I'll keep an eye out for things, and then I'll come home and I'll water them in the evening only when they need them, spot watering. And I started organic feeding a lot of my trees to slow them down. I started using akadama and everything. I started being really conscientious about like the selection of containers and stuff. And I was like, this is really getting to a point now where I've lost what I was doing before. And so I've got a table set to the side now where I was like, I'm going to practice bonsai over here, how my young bonsai brain would have loved seeing in the past. Like I made sure that I could separate wanting a really, really nice bonsai now and shelling out the money for a really nice stock piece or shelling out the money for a nice pot. But instead over here, I do have the tree in the nursery can. But instead of practicing it the way I did before, I'm applying it to as if oh, what if I would have known this back whenever I was training these trees this way, and I was only able to water these trees certain times of the day or treat them certain ways. And it's kind of a weird way to think. I know it's like, okay, how do you take really good care of one set of bonsai, and then the other set you try to act a little bit more rudimentary towards them? It's a weird thought process, but it helps me separate that in my mind, where like if a tree is really high end and it could go to show the next year, or is this tree purely for fun? Because I got into it. I'm like, all these fun, cheapy trees that have bad line, these trees that have poor nabari or no nabari, trees with terrible taper or inverse taper, really bad scarring issues. I started selling off these old pieces that I had for a while. And some of those trees would be the oldest trees in my collection. I sold all of them. And I only have a few of them left that were acceptable to me. And I'm like, why do I can't think like this all the time. I can't be like, it's the next best thing kind of mindset. That makes me feel like I'm selling out myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
sure.
it's, and I know it sounds like a big kind of, it just kind of like, almost like it's talking in a circle with myself about it. I mean, that's kind of how I approach it in a way is, this is how I thought then, this is how I think now, but why don't I try to pull the reins back on trying to move so fast? Because I mean, bonsai is not about speed, of course, everybody knows that. We've talked about this dozens of times. I'm sure this comes up, but that is where I was a year ago. And now where I'm at now, I want to, like my resolution with my trees this year is to really, really take my time with, and we've talked about this in the past, like growing out branches to the appropriate trunk and girth size for placements of trees. Starting more and more. I want to start more and more trees that are long-term projects, not 5-year plan trees, but like I pulled some silverberries a couple months back, and I said these silverberries are only about the size of my thumb, but when I'm finally ready to pot these trees up and start wiring them out for refinement and deciding on what their overall design is going to be, I want to grow these from thumb size to, larger than my wrist or even bigger maybe, and make some really long-term plans like that. I think there's a lot of things we get caught up on is like, once we feel like we crack a code on how we develop our trees, we're like, oh, I know how to get there faster now, so I'm going to start doing this. And, one of the pitfalls for me is I work at a bonsai nursery and run the nursery. And not only that, do I design and make decisions on all of the trees there because we have to sell them. So I do have to make those quicker planned trees. And so I would love to be able to step back now that I finally have done a lot of things I wanted to do and start taking it from square one appropriately in my mind with it. And then I did want to mention, I know it kind of seems a little sidetrack after giving you guys a little bit of a deeper dive into my thought process as well. We will be talking with Oscar from Bonsai Empire pretty soon here, but if there's one thing you guys could do is download his Bonsai Care app on Android or on Apple, and it's a good way to keep track of your trees over time. That's something, just mentioning it there because it seems like it suits it kind of suits what I'm thinking of, is like being able to take photos of more stuff and keep track of all your trees. That's something that I hear a lot of people say, I wish I had a photo of my tree back when I did this, because nobody will believe that I did this. I wired this branch or grew this out, or this was a nothing like Home Depot plant 5 years ago. No, that's something else that more documentation, more writing things down. But yeah, like I said, we'll be talking to Oscar about that app later on, but it's a good thing to mention. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me though. Like you said, New Year's resolutions are like, they could be corny. They could be like I want to eat better or I want to sleep better. But honestly, how are you those kind of things?
I like the bonsai ones better.
Yeah, the bonsai ones are always better.
Yeah.
At least life is rewarding in multiple ways, but But when it comes to bonsai, with like certain things that we apply, these thought processes that we're going to go through and try to reevaluate the way we approach bonsai, those will ultimately become more rewarding, and it's appropriate for the evolution of how we think about bonsai too. So
For sure.
but yeah, did you have any more comments or anything on that, Mike?
No, I don't. Well, one thing is like, oftentimes like I talk a lot about growing things fast and stuff like that. And I think like bonsai is more, and this goes back to like the Zen stuff, but I think it's more about efficiency than anything else. Like when I used to do martial arts and everything in kendo and whatnot, these old 80-year-old guys would always kick the young guys' asses, like literally kick their asses. And they would do this thing called geiko, where you would just like spar with these old guys. And you'd form a line of like 50 or so practitioners, all young guys. And you'd get the time in the ring with the guy, enough time to where he'd get to knock you out. So you could stand as long as you could until he hit you. And I'll tell you, it was like a conveyor belt for these old guys. Like they would just knock you out after like 20 seconds, and the next guy would go in, and 20 seconds he's out, and 20 seconds the next guy's out. And they didn't move fast. Nothing was about moving fast. Everything was about like timing. It was all timing. And I think bonsai is very much the same. I think everything is, you learn as you do this longer and longer, the timing on when to make the cuts, the timing on how long to wait, the timing on like how to maintain momentum in the project, so you're not like pruning it so often that it fizzles out, and ultimately you do move faster. But I think it's almost like winning a game of chess with less moves. You want to make as few moves as possible, and you want to crank out as many trees as possible before we inevitably die. So, you want to get as efficient as possible is my kind of thought on that.
I think that's the kind of thing too I was thinking of, is like with my table where I'm developing the trees differently and with a different mindset, but making more efficient moves than I ever would have made back whenever I was making baby steps with bonsai.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. I love all the thoughts and all the I guess all the positive energy towards making good bonsai in this episode. But it's kind of punny because, it's a bonsai joke at the same time. But yeah.
This podcast is supported by Bonsai Bar, the beginner bonsai workshop popping up in breweries all across the Northeast. Bonsai Bar is 2 hours of tiny tree goodness disguised as a night out with friends. Come grab drinks, create a new tree, and watch as your friends and family get the bug for bonsai. Bonsai Bar is always looking for teachers and assistants, and you listen to this podcast, so you're probably already qualified. Bring your knowledge out to the bar. Apply today. Find event tickets, contact info, and more at bonsaibar.com.
I guess we could kind of break into Shohin display a little bit if you want to. We went a little long on the resolution thing, but I mean that's how we
don't need to go too long into this, but I did want to kind of just go over some of the kind of rudimentary things about Shohin display. We just wrapped up a year of doing intensive Shohin study groups all over the country, and primarily the one local I do every month. And so I've been doing that for almost 2 years now, and like a year and a half. And so we've kind of grown a lot with Shohin display, and a lot of people have reached out and asked me about some of the specifics of Shohin display. And some of this is going to be very rudimentary, because what I've learned about display is the rules don't mean squat. Okay, they matter until they don't matter. So everything I'm going to tell you is like a guideline, because I'll say something and then you'll be able to Google an example of an award-winning tree that doesn't do what I say. So it's it's an art form, and if you want to play it safe, play by the rules. And if you want to take a risk for greatness, then don't play by the rules, you know? And so anyway, so typical Shohin display is you're always displaying 2 trees or more. So the only time you ever display a single Shohin is if it's a tall, elegant, Bunjin-esque tree. So other than that, you're displaying 2 or more. And there's always a primary tree, which is known as your top tree. Can't think of the Japanese terminology right this second. But then you have your assistant. So you have your top tree, your main tree, and then the assistant tree. And so the top tree is usually going to be the tree that's of the most reverence. So if you have a black pine and you're doing a really high reverence display, black pine is in the display. The black pine is always the main tree. So if you're doing 2 trees and one is a black pine, it's always your main tree. So that 2-tree display, it's always 2 trees, an accent, and possibly a scroll. Now, the other common thing that we see is the full cabinet display, the Nanaten Tanagazari. And that's like what you were saying, the rack. And that's 6 trees and 1 accent. And so there is no scroll, never a scroll. If you're using the cabinet display, it's too many elements to have a scroll with that. So you're never using a scroll with that. And the cabinet is arranged in 3 tiers. You have your top tier, which is, I believe, Chudan. I don't remember the top tier. The middle one is Chudan. The bottom one is Gedan. Miyoki. Miyoki is the top one. And the top one is always, always, always a black pine if you have a black pine. So do you want to ask me why it's a black pine?
I mean, I kind of have a feeling that's why. But can I take a guess?
Take a guess.
It's the king of bonsai.
King of bonsai. Yeah, 100%. That's it. So there's a lot of kind of metaphor, or not metaphors. There's a lot of things that people will say about why the black pine's the top tree. That, it's the tree at the top of the mountain, yada, yada, yada. But no, it's the king of bonsai. It's the patriarch of bonsai, and it's the longest studied subject of bonsai. And so we always pay reverence to that tree. And so that always sits at the top tree. The other thing I've heard is you then arrange the Chudan and Gedan sections according to where those trees would be found on the mountain. But that's also a little bit, I don't really think that's true. I think that's like a nice thought. But I think in reality, you're arranging the trees based on how the various textures, shapes, and forms play off of one another. So how their movement plays off of one another, how the textures, how the colors of the pots, things like that. And you're playing with how you're going to make the best composition with that. So I don't think it's anything more than that, really. Moving on from the main cabinet stage, we go to the Hanadashi, or the assistant. And the assistant is basically used to denote season. So we use the separate side tree, or your assistant tree. Even if you're just showing 2 trees, your assistant tree would be the one to denote season. So if it's winter, I would show a kinzu or a kumquat, because that's something that's always fruiting in winter. And there's tons of other rules. We could honestly talk about this for hours, because you're only ever allowed to use a conifer as an assistant in winter. So if you wanted to use a juniper as your assistant tree, it would have to be a winter display. And so a lot of little things like that. The other thing is that the pine, your main tree, always goes closest to the background. So if you're doing a cantilever display, and known as an informal display where it's not all in a line, your main tree always goes closest to the wall or closest to the background.
That's weird.
Yeah.
You could be forward.
No, and it's always at eye level. Your main tree is always at the highest point because you want it at eye level.
Yeah, because and it could be different too. I mean, because not every cabinet display has to have a black pine
No,
in it. Especially if it has a different theme or style, for instance.
correct.
If you like tropicals, all tropical display.
Correct. But if you have a black pine in the display, it damn well better be on top.
Yeah, it basically has to be. Otherwise, you'll
Has to
look down on.
It's
much.
well, not even that. You're looking down on the pine is what you're doing. Is you're kind of it's seen as disrespectful to the pine and all that it's done for us.
So our best chance for the top of the rack should be the tree that is studied the most within our range.
Correct. The tree of similar reverence. So it should be like a buttonwood for me, maybe a bald cypress for you, something like that. Similar reverence.
Yeah. And
But again, if you have a black pine in that display, I don't care. It goes on top. Yeah.
My idea one day is to finally get together a Louisiana Southeast range like cabinet display.
Yeah.
And I just don't see bald cypress show in. And I
made one, and I made one for Darlene Hutt. Not for her, but
I made him with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to think that, okay, well, yeah, we'll make it happen. It's just, I did have one in development and in that mindset. And, unfortunately I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. And I ended up selling it, and I feel bad about it now because I should have just kept developing. Now, I guess that's a New Year's resolution. If I want to do my show-in rack right and I want to honor the most important tree in my environment, then I'm gonna have to start like 10 bald cypress show-in this year to get and pick the best one.
Yeah, I mean that's something I've learned is if you want something in bonsai, a lot of times like specific, you want something specific, you have to grow it. And you have to like put the time in to grow it. So you want like a full-on Louisiana rack, you're gonna have to probably grow all of those trees. You know?
I've got my bases covered too. I've got my elm tree. I've got my the maple's not quite there. I can't really do an Acer rubrum is not a great show in. That's
yes, I thought that. I used to think that too, but saw one. I forget who made it, but I saw a picture of one that was like ramified to holy hell.
Yeah,
and
because they're a little bit more coarse than most maples.
They are coarse, but I do think that I think if you work with them long enough, it's just like anything. It's like, well, is it something you'd put in like mass production? No, because the average person's not going to have good luck with it. But I think if you spend the time with them, just about anything, if you put the time in, I think you can make good trees out of just about anything.
Yeah. What's been a real game changer for me is the water elm.
Yeah, I've seen you doing a lot with those. Those are pretty cool. Yeah.
I know they've been around for a while, and it's not a species that people just haven't heard of. It's some of the things I've been able to achieve at my nursery recently with these guys with cuttings and bending them and compressing them. And then also going back, and they return the favor with really great, not coarse at all, very twiggy, like ramification. I mean, they're great. And I feel like I've been sleeping on them for a while. I'm like, but it's one of those things I'm like, okay, it's time to take cuttings. It's time to twist the crap out of them. It's time to grow them out similar to in nature. How do you do your sea hibiscus?
Yeah.
Because whenever I went to nationals this past year, and I saw that one display where it was just all willow leaf ficus.
Yeah, that was Sutens.
And I was just like, oh, single species display, easy. Water elm for me.
And that's also what I mean by that's a quote unquote display faux pas, is you're never supposed to display the same species. It's always supposed to be every species different, not even two that are the same.
Yep.
So that's what I mean by like the rules only matter till they don't. They matter until somebody does it well. And then everybody's like, well, I guess we don't need those rules. So
see, he did that. Now it's got me thinking. I'm pretty sure if there's any other Shohin enthusiasts out there, including you, they're all probably like, oh well, okay, if Sutin did it,
right, exactly. It sets a precedent, and so that's what I mean by. And this is with art as a whole. I've thought a lot about this. Is if you want to be safe, and you want everybody to like your work and like it enough, then you just play by the rules. You go get a very conventional container that you've seen 1,000 different bonsai potted in, like a rinka, a standard rinka. You go get a standard semi-cascade that, is shaped like any other semi-cascade. You put it in and you refine the hell out of it with high skill. Well, granted, the work's done to a high level and you display it all by the rules. That's great. It's awesome. Yeah. But you haven't set a new precedent. You didn't change the game, and it's not memorable in a lot of ways. And so you got to think sometimes playing outside of the box and taking bigger risks has bigger rewards. So, making a display, and I'm not even saying I'm for that. I play it pretty safe, but I pay for that. I could go out there and be a lot more avant-garde and, have more risk and possibly more reward. But,
well, we'll see. I mean, like I said earlier on, it's like you're analyzing it the way you are now, but and maybe things will be different too. Like once you're a papa and I'm a papa.
Yes, then everything will be different. I'll be like, what bonsai? I sold them all.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I had to buy diapers. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, at least with one decent tree sale, you could buy diapers for about a month.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen diapers lately?
Yeah. They're
I just went with Lisa we just went baby shopping a couple nights ago, and I had $200 allotted in my mind. I'm like, okay, we're gonna knock out everything else we need for the baby, and $200. And we bought it. We've had a baby shower and stuff, so we have a lot of stuff, and so I'm like, okay, we're fine. And 2 items, we get 2 items in the cart, and we're already at $80. And I'm like, ruh-roh. Yeah.
It's like that meme where you see the kid from The Simpsons. He's sitting in the back and says, "I'm in trouble."
Yeah. It was bad. Yeah. So it's expensive. Baby stuff is expensive for sure.
Yeah. But it'll all work out. Bonsai will work out. Babies will work out. This new year is gonna be for I think, in my opinion, for bonsai, based off of some other things that I've seen recently from some other professionals, and also just personally with us as our little group here with Little Things and the show itself. I think this is going to be a big year.
I think so. I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping it's a big year. I'm hoping this year trumps last year.
I was surprised by by last year midpoint, in June, July. I was already surprised. So I think we're going to be upward momentum on this year. But really quick, just to kind of close out our episodes like we normally do, we try to keep more consistent with how this show is formatted. We're going to go ahead and cover our bonsai word of the week. This is a 2-part word. I'm going to try to go back to the Japanese, just straight pronunciation.
Just send it full send.
Yeah, we're going to try it. I really like what it means, but I think it's Yeti Suke.
Nope.
No.
Well, let's do it again. One more time.
So wait, that you isn't.
No, I'm just teasing you. I might be right.
Yueti Suke Kakudo. That sounds pretty good.
Actually, that's pretty good. Let me just take a look. Let's see. I got to find it in that. Hang on, everybody. I'm sorry to stall the podcast. I just want to see where the word is. Where is the word? Where did you send that to me?
It would have been at 4:00.
4:00.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, my phone just died. Never mind. Sounds good to me.
I was about to say with the the magic of editing, maybe that part, but I'm like, no, leave that part in. That was kind of fun. But no, it's Uetsuke, Yutsuki Ka.
Yutsuki?
It's UET. So how do you say that?
Wet?
UET.
Yeah, wet.
Oh, it's wet?
Yeah.
Wetsuki Kakudo? I think that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. The UET. I think it would do yit or.
I'm guessing because there used to be a karate style called Weichi, and that was UI or UE, I think.
Yeah, Yetsuki actually sounds very. I mean, I'm not. It's kind of silly of me to be like, oh, that sounds Japanese, but I'm like, oh wait, that feels a little bit more like it flows a little bit more. But Yatsuki Kakudo is the angle in which the bonsai is planted is basically what that means. And I know this is not a word that people are going to run with and use it in conversations at their bonsai clubs or amongst their friends. And maybe you will. Maybe you'll be like, oh, did you hear that thing that Evan tried to say on Little Things this past week? But anyway, but no, I think it's a great thing because we talked about line on the previous episode. Me and Carmen went over why is the line important? And it's like we had mentioned things like, okay, well, what is line versus takagari? What is line versus taper into the main trunk? What does all that mean? And this is another one that is a really defining feature of a bonsai, in my personal opinion, especially the angle is going to be really important because, I mean, you could change a straight up and down horizontal line on a tree by simply angling the tree or whenever it comes into the angle of the tree, how does that angle, not only planting that angle or even choosing the angle, how does that influence the rest of the flow of the tree? How does it affect the rest of the line of the tree? And I think that all those things really, really kind of start to make this little beautiful like bonsai soup kind of get together all these different words and these different approaches and meanings to them. I think it's just one more, you don't need to necessarily like add Wetsuke Kakudo to your vocabulary, but it should be in your thought process of what angle is best for this tree.
Yeah, agreed. Because 100%, I'm not going to remember that word.
It's a cool word, though.
It is. I might. Sometimes something just like sticks it with me, especially some of the Japanese words. I just like find myself saying it over and over, but I don't know. Like there's one guy, I have a pot by a guy named Ichiwabachi. I can't stop myself from saying that.
Ichiwabachi?
Ichiwabachi.
Ichiwabachi?
Wow. No, Ichiwabachi.
Ichiwabachi. Wow.
Wow.
This guy is not listening. I'm listening, but I
know. I love it. Honestly, it's like the best. It's the best. You should just run with that.
No, like I know it's always this thing where I'm trying my best to interpret, like, for instance, when Laurent was here and I kept having to understand his misinterpretation of how I pronounce words and then the way he said them and a different, like the dialects that he might have learned it from watching shows or listening to people talk on radio or music or just conversations with and I start picking up those things like, man, I've compounded this difficulty of pronunciation with this.
Well, he thought my name was, he's like, oh, you have the same name as the guy from Die Hard. And I'm like, what? Die Hard? And I'm like, Mike Lane. Oh, yeah, no, it's not the same.
So, I'm just going to have to say that's adorable. Oh, man, McLean. That's good. That's good. I think that's a good nickname.
And he was also when we were fishing for trout, he kept calling him Troot. Troot. He's like, you're gonna catch Troot. Yeah, well, I liked it.
One of the things that got me every once in a while was when he told me that he was going to bend a branch too much, and if he went too far, it would dry.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, why does he keep saying it's going to dry out? If it dries out, it's dead. But then I'm like, oh, he's saying die. God damn.
No, he is saying dry because it will. Like if you break it, it'll lose water and dry out and like shrivel up.
Yeah.
And so
and it kind of was like a double meaning for me. I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But Wetsuki Kakudo, use it. Wetsuki is, I'm probably saying that so wrong. Hold on a second. Checking something real quick. I'm doing some Googling.
It's all right. I'm just running with it.
English to Japanese. Thank God for Google. Just like walk around with a translator. Kakudo means angle.
There you go.
Yep.
Planting angle.
Yep. I mean, I guess, but I don't know. We'll leave it at that. But the planting angle is going to be a very good defining feature of the tree. And I don't know. And just kind of wrap up the thought of the bonsai word of the day, why it's important too, is if you're ever confused about how you're going to approach a piece of material, or even if you've had a tree for a very long time, and you're like, man, this tree is getting so boring to me. I don't know what else I could possibly do to make this thing interesting. Take it and like tip it to one side or another. Try it in all angles. Get your little wood block and go back and forth. See what works. If it changes it, and then you're like, oh crap, but that branch is here. This is not going to be right for what plane this branch is in. It's what they made bonsai wire for, baby.
That's right.
So yeah, play with angles with your trees. Don't just pick up the tree from the store and the way that it's planted in the container. That's it. Angles asymmetry. If I could think of anything that's more about angles and creating that, the best way to create asymmetry is to literally give something a dramatic angle or change in direction. So take that and store it and put it away for later. But yeah. So let's kind of do our closing stuff that we usually do. Thank you guys so much for listening. And what I have been saying a lot more recently, if this is your first episode, I'm sorry. It's just something I've been saying a lot recently, but I just think it's funny. But yeah, if you guys want to go over to underhillbonsaistore.com and go to the little things tab, you can pick up one of our really cool t-shirts. I'm hoping to run a new print run of shirts with brand new designs this year. It's going to be something I'm looking forward to. We're going to be doing some more stuff with the Instagram page in the future here. A lot more critiques coming this year. So go over to Instagram and follow us on Little Things for Bonsai People on Instagram. You can follow Underhill there as well if you want to be super cool for extra kudos points. And then since Carmen's not here to say the things that she would normally say, we'll go ahead and say it. You can go over to Becoming Bonsai on Instagram. Go check out what Carmen's got going on. And also go over to the purplepotsociety.org. And if you're a woman in bonsai or practicing bonsai, they are a women's national bonsai group. They're supporting the education and representation of women in bonsai. And also, you don't have to be female to be part of that group. I'm part of it, and I support it. I think it's awesome. And I love purple pots too. Purple pots are cool. And then for Mike, where can they go check your stuff out, bud?
They can check me out at www.kitsunebonsai.com. You can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram. We do have a new class coming up for people who are local, a brews and bonsai class on the 11th, focusing on junipers. So if you guys can make it, that'd be awesome. Other than that, we're just working on updating the website and hopefully have some new ideas here for this year, selling some new merch and some new items. So.
And another thing, since you mentioned that for a class, I just remembered if you go over to underhillbonsaistore.com and you go to the workshops tab, we have our yearly Yamadori class is going to be via Zoom call this year. People who want to come in person and come hang out, that's cool. But I'll be doing a kind of like a wide shot Zoom call where you could see me talking about Yamadori in Southeast Louisiana. Keep in mind the class will be pertaining to practices that I use here. They might not be, well, they definitely won't be useful to people who collect like mountain Yamadori, stuff like that. I'm strictly talking about Numadori, which is the swampadori, basically. But yeah, a lot of the stuff we do here, tempered trees like bald cypresses, water elms, winged elms, Acer rubrum, huckleberry varieties, all kinds of cool stuff we got here. So yeah, go over to underhillbonsaistore.com and you can go sign up for that class. It's, I'm going to be doing it basically for an hour or so, going through the principles of collecting, and there's more to it than just that. And also on the workshops, we go ahead and just mention it real quick under the workshop tabs. We have Say Bonsai or Say Bonsai like Say Bone. Tickets are available now. It just so happens that Mike is going to be there.
Yeah,
this is going to be March 30th at Underhill over here in Folsom, Louisiana. It's gonna be a great time. We're gonna have Mike, and we're gonna have Shannon Salyer over here as well. He's from the Nashville area, isn't he?
He's from Knoxville.
Knoxville, there we go. He's from the Knoxville area. He's really skilled, like highly technical bonsai guy from the area. Has some really great work. I'm sure he's submitted to many professional shows that you guys would recognize as trees and not even realize. You're like, oh, cool. But yeah, we're gonna have these two guys hanging out. We're gonna be shooting the shit, eating crawfish, having a beer or two maybe. Even though my resolution was not to drink, we'll do our best to do one on that day. But yeah, and then we're gonna have a bonsai show. We're gonna have a full on show. We're gonna have the proper setup where we have the tables with the tablecloths and the display stands and we're gonna do a whole thing there. We're gonna give away awards, and it's a good time. Last time we did it, we had a blast. This time we're going bigger, so make sure you guys go over and check that out. We're hoping to get as many people as possible. You don't have to be from Louisiana to participate in Say Bonsai. We would love for people to come from out of the state and come show their trees. Come check out the show. Come watch Mike and Shannon work. And also, if you are interested in vendoring at this show, email me at evan@underhillbonsai.store. Oop. Email me at evan@underhillbonsai.com. I'm so used to saying bonsai store. But yeah, just email me there and we can talk. I would love to support other vendors in bonsai. It'd be great. But anyway, but yeah, this has been fun hanging out, being really philosophical. And like we said in the past, people love philosophical things. A lot of people get on the podcast so they can just kind of mellow out and listen to somebody else kind of think complicated thoughts for them, So thanks for hanging out and talking with me today, Mike.
Yeah, man, for sure. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, buddy. And Happy New Year to all of our bonsai best buds and all of those blossoming new bonsai people out there in the world. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Happy New Year, guys.
Have a great one.
All right. See you guys.